At the turn of the century, deep in the Arkansas backwoods, there was a place the locals refused to name out loud after sunset, Widow's Hollow. A winding road led into it, shrouded in mist and silence. Travelers said their horses grew uneasy there, snorting and pulling at their reins. Others swore that if you listened long enough, the wind carried whispers, faint voices begging for help. For decades, farmers, loggers, and trappers had vanished in that stretch of forest. Their belongings were later found scattered on the trail, but never their bodies. The sheriff blamed bears. Preachers blamed sin. But the old-timers knew better. They said there was a cabin in that hollow, a cabin that fed on strangers. Eli Carter was a wanderer, 24 years old, worn boots, sunburned skin, and eyes that had seen too many hard miles. He'd worked the rail lines across Missouri, hauled timber in Tennessee, and now, in the cold autumn of 1902, he was walking toward Fort Smith, Arkansas, hoping for work before the winter hit. He carried little, a satchel, a folding knife, and an old harmonica that once belonged to his father. Hunger gnawed at him as he trudged the dirt road. When he reached the town of Maple Bend, he stopped at a tavern, asking the locals for directions through the woods. That's when the room fell silent. A gray-bearded man at the bar spoke first. "You don't want that road, son." "Not through Widow's Hollow." Eli smiled wearily. "I've walked worse places." The man shook his head. "Not like this one. If you smell baking bread out there, don't follow it." Eli laughed, but the warning stayed with him. By sundown, fog rolled in thick as milk. The trees leaned closer, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. Eli wrapped his coat tighter, cursing the cold. His stomach rumbled. He hadn't eaten since dawn. Then he smelled it. Bread. Fresh, warm bread. He stopped. It made no sense. He was miles from town. The scent floated through the mist, sweet and inviting. And then, through the fog, he saw it. A faint orange glow ahead. He followed it until the shape of a cabin appeared. Sturdy logs, smoke rising from a stone chimney. A lantern hung by the door, swaying slightly. A woman stepped into the light. She was tall, thin, but graceful. Her hair streaked silver, though her face seemed too young for it. Her eyes, however, were distant. "Come in, child," she said softly, her voice low and melodic. "You look half frozen." Eli hesitated, but the warmth spilling from the open door was too tempting. He nodded and stepped inside. The cabin was cozy, rough-hewn but clean. Herbs hung from the rafters, and a cast-iron stove glowed with orange heat. The woman handed him a plate of bread and stew, the kind of food that made you forget hardship for a while. "My name's Ada Whitlock," she said. "I don't often see travelers this late in the season." Eli swallowed a mouthful, savoring it. "Name's Eli." Just passing through her smile was faint. "Everyone says that." They spoke little after that. Eli noticed she never ate. She only watched him. Her pale eyes followed his hands as he tore the bread apart. When he thanked her for the meal, she nodded but didn't smile again. "You can sleep by the fire," she said. "The woods aren't safe at night." And as he drifted into sleep, he thought he heard something moving under the floor. The fire had burned low when Eli woke. The room was dim, shadows stretching along the walls. Then came the sound again. A faint thump beneath the floorboards. He sat up, heart pounding. Another thump, closer this time, followed by a dragging sound as if something heavy was being pulled through the dirt. He whispered, "Rats," but he didn't believe it. Then he noticed something stranger. Ada's door was open. She was gone. The noise stopped. Silence pressed against his ears. Then a whisper, not from above, but from beneath. "Hungry?" Eli froze. His skin prickled with cold sweat. When dawn broke, Ada was back in her room as if she'd never left. The next morning, Ada hummed as she kneaded dough. Her hands moved quickly, rhythmically. But Eli noticed something odd. There was no flour dust on her apron, only faint dark stains near her wrists. He stepped outside for air. That's when he saw it. Near the back of the cabin, half covered with leaves and moss, a small wooden hatch, a trap door. Curious, he knelt and tried to lift it, but it wouldn't budge. It was sealed tight. He brushed off more leaves and saw carvings burned into the wood, strange symbols he didn't recognize. When he came back inside, Ada's humming had stopped. She stood by the window, her eyes fixed on him. "You shouldn't wander back there," she said. "That part of the house? It remembers things." Her voice trembled slightly. For the first time, Eli saw fear on her face. Not anger, but fear. By noon, Eli decided to leave. He thanked Ada for her kindness, saying he had miles to cover before nightfall. She simply nodded, neither trying to stop him nor wishing him well. The air outside felt strangely heavy, as if the forest itself was watching. He followed the trail for an hour before spotting someone ahead. An older man limping along the road, a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Morning," Eli called. The man looked up sharply, his eyes widened. "Where'd you come from?" "Cabin back yonder. Woman named Ada." The man dropped his rifle. "Good Lord, son." "You made it out?" Eli frowned. "What are you talking about?" "That place ain't right," the man said. "My brother went in there last year. Never came back. They found his horse wandering near the creek, saddle torn open like something clawed at it." He stepped closer, voice low. "That woman don't feed strangers bread, son." "She feeds the cabin." Eli stared at him, half believing, half scoffing. But deep down, something about the way Ada's eyes glowed in the firelight made the man's words too easy to believe. Eli didn't sleep that night. He waited until dark, then crept back through the woods to the cabin. He told himself it was curiosity, but it was more than that. He couldn't shake the thought of Ada, alone, haunted, cooking bread she didn't eat. Through the window, he saw her kneeling by the trap door, whispering words he couldn't understand. The lid opened on its own, revealing a dim red glow below. He watched in horror as she lowered a bowl into the pit. Something moved beneath the floor. A shape, twitching and pulsing, covered in roots that glowed faintly crimson. Then, like a snake, something rose and snatched the bowl. Ada whispered, There, hush now." Her voice shook with emotion, not fear, but sorrow. Eli stepped back, horrified. The woods felt alive around him, the trees bending as if listening. He realized then that whatever lived under that cabin wasn't just there. It was part of the earth itself. At dawn, Eli confronted her. "I saw what you did," he said, his voice trembling. "What's under that floor, Miss Ada?" She turned slowly, eyes hollow. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." She looked toward the stove, where the bread from the night before still sat untouched. "It started the year my husband died," she said quietly. "The fever took him. I buried him out back, but that night I heard him calling from under the floor. When I opened the trap door, something else answered. It promised to keep me alive, if I kept it fed." Her voice cracked. "I was young, alone, and hungry. So I let it feed. Once." Eli's stomach turned. "And the travelers?" Tears welled in her eyes. "I stopped counting after the fifth. I tried to stop, but it gets inside your head. It makes you crave what it craves. When I don't feed it, it takes pieces of me instead." She held up her arm, thin, almost skeletal. The veins beneath her skin glowed faintly red. Eli's heart twisted. She wasn't a monster by choice. She was trapped. "What if we end it?" he asked. "Burn it, salt the ground, destroy the thing." Ada shook her head. I've tried. It always comes back. The cabin's roots run deeper than any grave he stepped closer. Then let it starve. If you don't feed it, maybe it'll die. Her eyes widened. You don't understand. It feeds on hunger, not flesh alone. It feels every craving in this place. Mine, yours, anyone's. If you stay, it'll know you too. Eli looked around the cabin. The bread, the warm fire, the floor that seemed to breathe faintly. He clenched his fists. Then let it come for me. I won't let it take anyone else. For the first time, Ada's expression softened. Not fear this time, but hope. God help you, child, she whispered. You don't know what it means to make a bargain with hunger. That night, Ada didn't prepare the bread. No stew simmered on the stove. No humming filled the cabin. Instead, she sat in silence, eyes on the fire, hands clasped tightly together. Eli could tell she was afraid, not of him, but of the cabin itself. Outside, the wind moaned through the trees, and the walls creaked like something alive. You can still leave, Ada whispered, barely audible. I'm not leaving you, Eli replied. You've been alone too long. The cabin groaned, the floor shifting subtly beneath them. The fire sputtered and dimmed, as if the air itself grew thinner. Eli felt a strange pressure in his chest. Hunger, but not his own. Ada shivered. It's waking up. Let it wake, Eli said, forcing calm into his voice. It'll find I'm not easy to swallow. But deep down, he was terrified. The storm came after midnight, rain slamming against the windows, lightning tearing through the black sky. Eli lay awake, staring at the rafters, feeling the floor pulse faintly like a heartbeat. Then, a sound like a long drawn-out sigh rose from beneath the boards. Ada sat upright in her bed, trembling. It's coming. The trapdoor split open with a deafening crack. From it crawled dark roots, slick, glistening, pulsing with red light. They slithered across the floor toward Ada. She screamed, trying to pull free as they wrapped around her ankles. Eli grabbed the lantern and hurled it to the ground. Fire leapt up, spreading fast. Run, he shouted. Ada didn't move. She looked at the flames, then at Eli. You don't understand. It won't let me go. It owns me. The roots tightened around her, dragging her closer to the pit. Eli lunged forward, trying to grab her hand, but the last thing he saw before the fire flared bright was her tear-streaked face disappearing into the darkness below. The cabin was burning, the walls groaning as they collapsed. Smoke filled Eli's lungs as he stumbled through the doorway, coughing and choking. Outside, rain poured down, but the flames didn't die easily. It was as if the fire and the hunger were wrestling for control of the same body. Through the roar of the blaze, Eli heard her voice, faint, echoing from beneath the earth. Promise me. Don't let it live again. He fell to his knees in the mud, staring at the inferno. Then, with a desperate cry, he whispered, I promise. A final burst of fire tore through the roof, and then silence. The cabin was gone. By morning, only ashes and smoke remained. The woods were still and strangely calm, as if the forest itself had exhaled after years of holding its breath. Eli searched the ruins and found nothing of Ada, no body, no bones. Only a small locket, blackened by the fire but still intact. Inside was a faded photograph. Ada, a man, and a little baby, smiling in the sunlight. Eli sank to the ground, grief washing over him. She hadn't been evil, just desperate. The thing under that cabin had fed on her loneliness, her sorrow, her fear. He buried the locket under the largest oak tree nearby and whispered, Rest now, Miss Ada. You're free. Then he turned and walked away, thinking it was over. He was wrong. Weeks later, Eli found work in a sawmill near the town of Hartford. He tried to forget. But at night, the dreams came. Dreams of the cabin, of roots crawling through the dirt, of Ada's voice whispering, "Feed me." Sometimes he'd wake to find splinters under his nails, as if he'd been clawing at the floor in his sleep. One morning, while washing his hands, he noticed something horrifying, a small black sprout emerging from the skin near his wrist. It looked like wood, not flesh. He cut it out with his knife, biting back a scream. But by the next day, two more had appeared. Eli realized the truth with a sickening dread. The hunger hadn't died in the fire. It had moved into him. Eli left the mill that night without a word. He couldn't risk staying near anyone. Every time someone walked too close, he felt it stir inside him, a craving not his own. He wandered the back roads of Arkansas, trying to outrun the thing growing within him. But wherever he slept, the grass died. The trees twisted, their bark blackening. By the third week, the veins in his arms pulsed, faintly red beneath his skin. He no longer felt hunger for food, only a gnawing, endless emptiness that whispered of souls, of flesh, of warmth. He remembered Ada's words, "It feeds on hunger itself." Eli began to wonder, could he stop it before it consumed him completely? It was during a storm that he met her. A little girl, no older than 10, sat crying beneath a fallen tree. She was soaked, shivering, clutching a broken doll. Eli's heart twisted. He remembered his own sister, lost to fever when they were children. "Hey," he said softly, "it's all right. You're safe now." She looked up with wide blue eyes. "My parents? They're gone." He gave her his coat and a piece of bread from his pack. "Eat this. You need strength." She smiled weakly and took a bite. For a moment, he felt something inside him relax. Warmth, humanity. But then he noticed it, his palms glowing faintly red, the veins pulsing. The hunger had awakened. It wanted her. The roots began to move beneath the muddy ground, writhing like snakes. The girl didn't see them at first. Eli stood, trembling. "Run," he whispered. She blinked. "Mister?" "Run!" he shouted. She stumbled back as the earth split open, black tendrils surging upward. Eli grabbed the roots with both hands, fighting them, screaming through the pain as they burned into his flesh. The hunger roared inside his head, 1,000 voices whispering, "Feed, feed." He knew what he had to do. With trembling hands, Eli drew his knife. "Not this time," he said. "You can take me, but you'll never touch her." And he drove the blade into his own chest. The roots convulsed, twisting violently, trying to pull away from him, but Eli held on, forcing them closer, pressing his blood into the soil. The red light flared, then shattered into darkness. The girl screamed as he fell to his knees. His vision blurred, but he saw her, safe, untouched. He smiled faintly. "Tell them," he gasped, "the cabin's gone." Then the ground trembled one last time. The roots withered, and the rain poured harder, washing the blood away. When the storm ended, the forest was quiet again. The hunger was gone. And where Eli fell, a small oak tree had begun to grow, its leaves golden in the gray dawn. Years later, travelers still spoke of Widow's Hollow, but not with fear anymore. They said that if you were lost or hungry, a golden-leafed oak would appear at the edge of the woods. Its branches would point the way home, but if your heart carried greed, cruelty, or hunger for others' pain, the forest would twist around you, and you'd never find your way out. Locals said a figure sometimes stood beneath that tree, a man in a torn coat, eyes kind and sad, humming an old tune on a harmonica. They called him Eli of the Hollow, the drifter who fed the hunger with his own soul so that others might live.